You propose to ban the sale of violent video games to people under the age of 18, and you comment that the current video game rating system, the ESRB committee, is very flawed. You're right, ESRB is flawed. It does, however, currently have in place a rating system that designates certain games as being rated M for mature and only suitable for people ages 17 and older. According to ESRB in the company's mission statement on their website, under the Enforcement of Ratings link, ESRB states that it currently encourages video game retailers to abide by its ratings policy with regard to selling mature games to people under 17. However, while ESRB encourages this, ESRB, and I quote, does not have the legal authority to implement or enforce sales policy with respect to video games. Now, with regard to fiat, I ask, how in the world, if the long-established ESRB cannot enforce an age-based ban, how would you be able to enforce your ban? Your ban cannot be enforced, and therefore, it wouldn't change the status quo, and it wouldn't affect the sale of violent video games, and it wouldn't decrease the harms that accompany people playing violent video games. Now, moving on. I do not think that your ban, even if it were able to be enforced, would change the status quo as it is today. You lay out the dangerous effects of violent video games as they serve as potential inspiration for horrific shootings. As in the past, there have been shootings inspired by violent video games. Specifically, you touched on the Halo 3 inspired shooting, and there is, of course, the recent Newtown, Connecticut school shooting. Now, Iowa State University psychologist Dr. Craig A. Anderson, who I believe you mentioned, explains that these shootings were not directly caused by video games in a New York Times article that was published on February 13, 2013. He says, and I quote, "None of these extreme acts, like a school shooting, occurs because of only one risk factor. There are many factors, including feeling socially isolated, being bullied, and so on." Okay, so touching on Lanza specifically, he very well may have decided to go shoot the school whether or not he had ever played a violent video game in his life. Now, according to Dr. Peter Langman, in a December 22nd, 2012 article called Keeping Kids Safe, he comments that Adam Lanza was bullied heavily in his life, and he illustrated the signs of an undiagnosed schizophrenic. Langman elucidates that Lanza, having played violent video games in his life, may have had no effect on his horrible decision to shoot the school. In fact, he probably would have shot the school up no matter what. But for the sake of this debate, let's say that violent video games did prompt Lanza's actions. Adam Lanza was 20 years old. Under your ban, he would still be able to buy and play violent video games. If violent gaming caused the shooting, under your ban, he still plays these games. He still shoots up the school. People still die. Your ban doesn't alleviate the harms of the current status quo. Now, this is to the judge. Were you, judge, to vote in favor of an affirmative that did not change the status quo, it would become commonly accepted precedent that the status quo is perfectly acceptable, and therefore there would be no reason to have any debate at all over the harms of the status quo or over potential resolutions to the harms caused by the status quo. And in time, debate would deteriorate and not exist at all. Were a judge to vote in favor of such affirmative, he or she would be contributing to the death of debate, and therefore that you can in no way vote for the affirmative.